Happy Halloween month, everybody, and Tony here with my review of Ottorino Respighi's La Fiamma, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. The conductor was Carlo Rizzi, the production was done by Christof Loy, the sets were done by Herbert Murawa, the costumes were done by Barbara Dozin, the lights were handled by Fabrice Kebois, the assistant director was Eva Maria Abelein, the chorus master was Jeremy Bynes, the children's chorus master was Christian Lindhorst, and the dramaturg was Konstantin Parnian. Respighi's La Fiamma premiered in Italy, more specifically in Rome, on January 23, 1934 at the Teatro Reale dell'Opera. It also consisted of an all-star cast, specifically starring Aurora Boades d'Alessio as Eudosia, Angelica Kravchenko as Agnese di Cervia, Giuseppino Cobelli as Silvanna, Carlo Tagliabue as Basilio, and Angelo Minghetti as Donello. With a libretto written by Claudio Guastalla, this opera was in turn based on Hans Wirs Jensen's play Anne Pedestot, which in turn was also based on the real-life Anne Pedestot, a Norwegian woman accused of witchcraft and was burnt at the stake at roughly 60 years old. Not only was she accused of witchcraft, but also of infanticide. Anna Pedestot's case is also one of the most renowned cases throughout Europe involving witchcraft, and in turn, this was the basis to make La Fiamma come to fruition. Unlike the real-life Anna Pedestot, in which she was mainly based in 15th century Norway, the action of La Fiamma takes place in 7th century Ravenna, Italy, more specifically during the Byzantine era. This opera consists of themes such as witchcraft, illicit love, and fanaticism, more specifically religious fanaticism involving Eudosia's fanatical faith in her Christian religion, more specifically her Orthodox religion, as well as the illicit love blooming between Donello and Silvana, who are in actuality stepson and stepmother, although Silvana is Basilio's second wife. The basic plot of this opera goes like this. Eudosia, the Greek Orthodox patrician matriarch, is scolding the handmaidens for not measuring up to what proper women should be and warns them that they ought to maintain a sense of decorum should they be accepted into society. Eudosia also has a particular disdain against Silvana, Basilio's second wife, and in turn Donello's stepmother, because she suspects that Silvana's mother is a witch. Silvana cannot tolerate Eudosia's constant animosity against her and feels trapped in her current domicile, not only with her mother-in-law, but also with her husband. She confides in her confidant, Monica, one of the handmaidens, that she feels lonely in her domicile and wants a much freer life, and even misses that freer life. Donello returns home from Constantinople, especially since he was in service of Empress Irene, and offers his grandmother and the handmaidens gifts from that very country that he was in. There are also a few sparks brewing between Donello and Silvana, as they discover that they knew each other ever since they were children, but fate had other interesting plans for them. Just as Donello and Silvana are about to have that flame rekindled, a cry and a shout are heard, and those are coming from the old woman Agnese di Cervia, who is being chased by an angry mob because she was suspected of witchcraft and infanticide. She begs Silvana for help, and Silvana asks her if she can take the oath under the Lord, in which Agnese refuses. So Agnese hides in the palace. However, the angry mob is still hot on the heels against Agnese, and once they find Agnese, they take her to be executed by burning on the pyre. Subsequently, Agnese curses Eudosia, Basilio, Donello, and Silvana in the hopes that they will live miserably, especially where Silvana is concerned because she frames her as a traitor. She also frames her as someone who broke her trust and also sees to it that one day Silvana will be executed just like her as Agnese is dragged away and prepared to meet her fatal doom. Donello ends up flirting with a lot of the handmaidens, including Monica, Agata, Zoe, Lucilla, and Sabina. However, Silvana does not take too kindly with not only Donello doing this, but also Monica being involved in all of this debauchery. Therefore, Silvana chides Monica so heavily that she wants her out of the court immediately and into a convent. Monica brags that yes, she is in love with Donello and he can have her all he wants, and then exits, never to be heard or seen again, which is a shame because Monica is Silvana's confidant. Basilio returns home and confides in Silvana everything that she must know about her mother. She knew various spells, and she knew how to call men into her beck and call. Everything that she did, she had some type of mystery about her and used magic to solve a lot of her problems. And there is a chance that Silvana could inherit her mother's magical powers. Silvana is unsure that she has inherited her mother's dark gifts, but she gives it a try. She whispers Donello's name, and out of nowhere, Donello appears and they consummate their feelings. About half a year has passed, and Donello and Silvana are still involved in their illicit love. Donello ends up being called away back to Constantinople by Empress Irene, although hesitantly. Basilio is now seen as more aged and sickly and tries to find healing through Silvana. However, Silvana is not having any of it and curses him and damns him, thus stating that she never loved him and she felt so caged by not only him but also his mother, thus leading Basilio to die of a heart attack. Eudosia in turn sees the commotion and curses Silvana and accuses her of witchcraft. She is then taken to the tribunal, about to be tried. At first, Silvana, under the command of the bishop, denies all these charges of murdering Basilio or being involved in any form of illicit love. Even Donello tries to patch things up by taking the fall for Silvana, and the crowd tries to sympathize with both Donello and Silvana in terms of how tragic their intimate love is and how much they try to care for each other. Eudosia, on the other hand, is buying none of that and proves to the crowd that Silvana is the woman who hid Agnese di Cervia. And on top of that, Silvana also has a mother who was a witch. Donello is shocked by all this and turns away from Silvana. Silvana loses hope, and as the bishop tries to make her say the oath to prove her innocence, she hesitates. She can't do it. And the crowd cries for her blood as they cry out that she is a witch, just as she is about to be burnt at the stake. To say that Respighi's La Fiamma is shocking is quite an understatement. This has a mixture of not only shocking elements found in the illicit love between Donello and Silvana, but also those mystical, magic, and dark elements involving witchcraft and sorcery. I could even compare this opera to the likes of Verdi's Macbeth and Trovatore. Macbeth because it is a pretty magic-heavy opera, much like its original Shakespeare source material, as well as Il Trovatore because of the elements found in Azucena's mother being burnt at the stake, as well as the constant talk of witchcraft, not only through Azucena and the fatal destiny that is in store for Manrico, her supposed son, but also Il Conte di Luna, and to some extent Leonora. And what's also interesting about the title, La Fiamma, is that it would have been called La Strega, the witch, but the reason why it's called La Fiamma is very much versatile. The first obvious instance of La Fiamma is the fire engulfed for those accused of witchcraft. The second instance is the flame felt for love, the love that Silvana had for Donello, and the flame that she had for him, although it was at first extinguished because of her duty as a wife to Basilio, and to have that flame extinguished, especially as Eudocia frantically accuses Silvana of hiding Agnese, and also manages to lead to all of these tragic outcomes, is definitely something that made this opera a lot more exciting to witness from beginning to end. Now we get on to the production. I have grown less fond of Christof Loy's productions as I grow. I just cannot stand a lot of the Regie Theater productions because of the mostly bare sets and the overall minimalistic directions they are going to. What I would have loved for any production of La Fiamma is to have more intricate sets. We could have had replicas of Byzantine architecture and even more golden halls and costumes that are intricate and beautiful. You know, the type of costumes that spell 7th century Ravenna. A lot of the costumes, if not all of the costumes, are mostly black with a few hues of white, but mostly black. What's interesting about Silvana and the veils that she had, especially in the first act and the second act until the very last act, is that in the first act, her veil is green, which represents nature and the overall innocence that she used to feel being a girl of nature before being married to the much older Basilio, and even during the time that she and Donello were just innocent young kids playing in the field. Red in the final act represents her passion and the blood that will be shed, especially once the crowd finds out that she ended up hiding Agnese, and she ended up being the daughter of a witch, thus leading her fate to be sealed at the very end of the opera. Although I'm not really a fan of the more minimalistic approaches of this production, as well as the mostly monochrome choices of costumes, I am quite a fan of certain effects that made this production quite fascinating in its own special way, such as the use of fire when Agnese is executed for not only witchcraft, but also infanticide. Or what about the use of smoke, just to convey the hopelessness that Silvana is about to face? That is just quite something to witness and something that made this production quite salvageable. Although I'm not a huge fan of Christof Loy's very minimalistic approach to this production of La Fiamma, there were some good moments to be found, such as the use of fire for Agnese's execution, as well as the use of smoke to highlight the hopelessness that Silvana has in her final moments. And also dare not forget about the use of candles to also heighten certain intimate moments that Silvana is about to have, especially with her illicit affair with Donello. And now we get to the singers, starting off with Martina Serafin as Eudosia. Unlike Signora Serafin, who is actually a spinto soprano attempting more dramatic soprano roles, the role of Eudosia is actually for a contralto or dramatic mezzo-soprano, but more specifically, a deep, dark contralto with the high notes of a dramatic mezzo. Aurora Boades, the first Eudosia, was also a renowned Carmen, Azucena, Amneris, Ulrica, and Mistress Quickly, and many interpreters of Eudosia included the likes of Kerstin Torborg, Elena Nicolai, Maria Benedetti, Elena Obrazova, and Viera Banjevich. Eudosia could give the likes of Clytemnestra, Erda, Genevieve, Lazia Principessa, Sita, Ulrica, and Mama Lucia a run for their money because of how much her chest tones, aka her low notes, must be resonant and rich, full, and almost baritone-like. Not to mention, she also has some high notes, more specifically high B flats, that are also evident in her Verdian and Wagnerian counterparts, more specifically Azucena, Eboli, Amneris, Venus, Ortrud, Kundry, and even Kunitsa from Oberto, Conte di San Bonifacio. Therefore, the role of Eudosia calls for a huge range, both vocally and dramatically, for any contralto or dramatic mezzo-soprano, but more appropriately for a contralto, given the low notes that she has to sing, as well as throwing in some high B flats here and there. And Martina Serafin was quite involving as Eudosia. Sure, I do like the fact that she was able to attack those chest tones. However, she does not sound quite convincing enough in this particular matriarchal role. There were times that her chest tones didn't sound coordinated enough. There were even times that she sang in collapsed head voice. And there were also times that she didn't sound as darkly imposing as a proper contralto or dramatic mezzo would, because who I have in my ears when it comes to any true mezzo-soprano or contralto singing Eudosia are the likes of Elena Nicolai and Elena Obrazova, especially where Elena Obrazova is concerned because of how much she uses those dark, rich, and voluptuous chest tones to make Eudosia a formidable and indomitable matriarch. In fact, this is a role that I also stated could give the likes of Ulrica, Erda, and Clytemnestra a run for their money because of those deep chest tones. And while Martina Serafin did have those chest tones, there were times that she sounded kind of hollow on certain occasions. But when she committed with those chest tones, it was still a pretty good result, considering the many times that Signora Serafin has been more well known in roles like the Marschallin from the Rosenkavalier, Manolesco from Puccini's Manolesco, and these days having a go at the likes of Turandot, Brunhilde, and Isolde. Although she's not really fit for those roles, she is more appropriate for the more spinto soprano parts. So I was quite surprised to know when Signora Martina Serafin sang Eudosia. But theatrically, she was extremely involved in this particular role. She was able to give her A game at making this matriarch both formidable yet fragile, yet also imbue her with a sense of both nobility and paranoia that she possesses as a matriarch who practices Greek Orthodox Christianity and is totally firm, if not totally fanatical with her faith. So I have to give my hat off to Martina Serafin for a job well done theatrically as Eudocia, although I would rather look elsewhere for a true contralto or dramatic mezzo singing the part. We could have had someone who specializes in contralto and dramatic mezzo roles singing as Eudocia, and who I have in my ears would have been someone like Michaela Schuster. Look at her these days. She's singing the likes of Zita and Sia Principessa and Madame de Coissy, and she's doing extremely well in those roles, and she could have been a natural for Eudocia. But if I could take whatever nitpick I had with Martina Serafin out of the way, she was still an involving singing actress, even though her vocal goods as Eudocia were kind of hit and miss because of a preference for a true contralto or a dramatic mezzo who could also sing Erda, Madame de Coissy, Mamma Lucia, Mari, Clytemnestra, Ulrica, Zita, and La Zia Principessa. Nevertheless, Signora Martina Serafin did a commendable job as Eudocia, and she still managed to make the best out of her specific assets, most specifically her theatricality and her good musicianship to make Eudocia an involving character. Doris Zoffel proved to be not only a rock-steady Agnese di Cervia, but also peerless in this particular role. Agnese di Cervia is also much like her more religious fanatic counterpart, Eudocia, in the sense that she is also sung by a contralto or a dramatic mezzo-soprano. The first Agnese di Cervia, Angelica Kravchenko, was also renowned for her interpretations as Amneris as well as Waltraute from Götterdämmerung, but she also specialized in comic roles like the in-hostess from Boris Godunov, Mistress Quickly from Falstaff, and Marcellina from Le Nozze di Figaro. This role is just as coveted for many a contralto or dramatic mezzo-soprano, and many famous interpreters include the likes of Amalia Pini and Marta Schirmay. Although Agnese di Cervia is quite a thankless role for many a contralto or dramatic mezzo, given that she not only has her chest tones, which are so deep, rich, and full, but also sings a whole ton of high B flats that could even make the likes of Azucena, Amneris, and Eboli blush. But she also needs those deep, rich chest tones and good middle notes found in Erda, Fricka, Herodias, Madame de Coissy, Mère Marie de l'Incarnation, Fides, and Madame de la Haltière. This means that any contralto or dramatic mezzo-soprano must make the best out of her stage presence as well as her music to make Agnese a totally involving character and also make something out of this rather thankless part. And Doris Zoffel did just that and more. She was a total stage animal from beginning to end. She had this rock solid, rock steady technique found in those chest tones, and coordinated chest tones at that she still managed to use even at her current age of being in her late 70s. She is definitely a vocal miracle, and her technique is wobble free. There is no semblance of a tremolo or a wobble or anything that sounded too hollow for my legs. It's a clear, steady tone that still manages to age like the finest of red wine, and she was able to make me totally involved in the drama that Agnese finds herself in, both vocally and dramatically. And I have to give my hat off to Madame Zoffel for being such an amazingly astounding singing actress as Agnese di Cervia. Her vocal goods were definitely exceptional, and she was totally peerless in this role, thus making me salute her for everything she had to accomplish as this iconic witch. Olesya Golovneva grew and blossomed with beauty and might as Silvana. The first Silvana was Giuseppino Cobelli, who was also a renowned Isolde, Sieglinde, and Kundry, as well as Eboli throughout Italy and most of Europe and South America. Other renowned Silvanas include Maracoleva, Antonietta Stella, Ingeborg, and Montserrat Caballé, as well as Nelly Mirisioiu. If dramatic sopranos thought the likes of Floria Tosca, Zenta, Leonora di Vargas, Amelia from Un ballo in maschera, Abigail from Nabucco, Adriana Lecouvreur, and Maddalena de Coigny were tough, Silvana is just as tough as those aforementioned roles. There are times that Silvana does sing lyrically, much like her more Verdian counterpart Leonora de Vargas, but at other times she ends up blasting a lot of high notes, just like Floria Tosca, as well as Zenta and Chrysothemis, but she also must have superb acting talents, especially evident in any singer singing Freya from Das Rheingold or the third Norn from Götterdämmerung. She definitely must have the complete package from beginning to end, whether she sings lyrically or blasts her high notes or goes hysterical after everything that has happened. And Olesya Golovneva definitely bloomed with more chestiness and way more vocal involvement as a singing actress that I was totally astounded. I was initially fearful for Madame Golovneva because as I followed her career, she began as a coloratura soprano before heading to the more lyrical roles, and she's now establishing herself as a spinto soprano, specializing in roles like Giorgetta from Il Tabarro, and even having a go at Turandot and Salome. So while I think that her voice isn't particularly ideal for these type of meatier, more spinto soprano roles, I still have to give loads of credit to Olesya Golovneva for her sheer vocal perseverance. Her chest tones managed to sound a lot fuller. She gained a lot more in core, especially since she has now found her way as a more spinto soprano who also has the tendency to do a little bit more dramatic roles. But I would even argue that her true calling should definitely be in the spinto soprano repertoire. And sure, Silvana is a tad bit taxing and tough on Olesya Golovneva. However, her technique, her overall vocal perseverance, and the amount of strength that she had to offer in this role were just absolutely commendable. I could never, ever take my eyes off of her. I salute her for her laudable efforts as a superb singing actress. She may not be as great as my personal favorite Silvanas, which include Ingeborg and Montserrat Caballé, and even the original Giuseppina Cobelli. But even though she may not have the steeliness of a true dramatic soprano, even though she may not have those more incisive high notes like Birgit Nilsson, and even though she tends to try to force out her high notes just to make herself sound dramatic, which I would even admit was an Achilles heel on Olesya Golovneva's part, she was still an involved singing actress, and she still managed to give the vocal and theatrical goods to make Silvana a very involving character. Loads of kudos must be given to Caitlin Gaudimer for her stirring portrayal as the mother. And yes, even though this role might be rather small, it still requires strong singing from either a lyric soprano or a spinto soprano, especially when she must let her voice fly over the orchestra a la Arabella from Richard Strauss's Arabella, as well as the third Norn from Götterdämmerung, and lest I forget about Freya from Das Rheingold. And Caitlin Gaudimer has her superb vocal prowess in spades. She was able to sing over that orchestra and use that borderline spinto soprano voice with everything that she's got, and do so in the most beautiful and the most exciting way possible. There is a beautiful future for Miss Gaudimer in roles not only as Arabella, but also as Samuel Barber's Vanessa, and maybe even Freya from Das Rheingold, among many other great roles for either a lyric or a spinto soprano, unless I forget about Manosco by Puccini and Giorgetta from Il Tabarro. The possibilities for Miss Gaudimer are absolutely endless, and she deserves all of my kudos for everything that she has accomplished thus far. Suo was in excellently tip-top shape as Monica, and this role requires a lyric or lyric coloratura soprano. The first Monica was Laura Pausini, not the Italian pop singer Laura Pausini, but Laura Pausini. She was quite renowned in roles like Lucia di Lammermoor and Gilda from Rigoletto, as well as Violetta Valeri, and even did some supporting roles like Elvira from L'Italiana in Algeri and Clorinda from La Cerentola. The list of singers who sang Monica range from the very young Anna Moffo, who sang this role back in 1955 when she was only roughly 22 or 23 years old, alongside Mara Coleva, Giacinto Prandelli, Carlo Tagliabue, Lucia Danieli, and Maria Teresa Mandalari, respectively, as Silvana, Donello, Basilio, Eudossia, and Agnese. Aside from Anna Moffo, there was also the likes of Olga Romanko, who was also renowned for doing a lot of the full lyric and spinto soprano roles. So the list of singers singing Monica are absolutely diverse, whether she be sung by a mostly spinto soprano or, in Anna Moffo's case, a lyric coloratura soprano. She does need a great amount of lyricism to contrast with Silvana's more dramatic moments. But even Monica can steal the show and do so with girlishness and femininity, because she also needs those flexible top notes as well as that flowing beauty found in roles like Gilda, Violetta, Lucia Ashton, Alicia Ford, Nanetta, the Heavenly Voice, the Priestess from Aida, Musetta from La Boheme, Nella from Gianni Schicchi, the Fifth Maid from Electra, Aminta from Die Schweigsame Frau, and even the likes of Zerlina from Don Giovanni and Marcelline from Fidelio. Please do not let the role of Monica fool you, because this role is just as taxing for either a lyric soprano or even a lyric coloratura soprano. Even though she's not a major high singer, she still has to sing over that orchestra and do so with sufficient vocal beauty. And Suo did just that. I am just as astounded at how chessier her voice has become. I am just as astounded at just how much she was able to use coordinated chest tones to make her voice bloom and blossom throughout the theater. I am just astounded at just how beautifully Suo grew as a singing actress, and how her technique has been improving with every performance she was in. I already knew from the first time I've heard her voice that this was a light lyric soprano who can have this beautiful, creamy, and rich tone radiate throughout the theater, but also do so in a way that just makes her absolutely beautiful to listen to and absolutely involving to listen to. She is definitely following the footsteps of the likes of Elisabeth Schwarzkopf, Irmgard Seefried, and Teresa Stich-Randl in terms of finding her way as a lyric soprano who can sing the occasional coloratura soprano roles. In fact, I see a brilliant future in Suo in roles such as Manon by Massenet, Melisande from Peleas and Melisande, and True Love, Mignon from Ambroise Thomas Mignon, Charpentier's Louise, Lucia Ashton from Lucia de Lammermoor, Elvira from I Puritani, Alicia Ford from Falstaff, Berthe from Le Prophète, Mireille from Charles Gounod's Mireille, and Marguerite from Faust. The possibilities for Suajo are absolutely endless, and she has grown with every new role that she has been singing, and her technique has continued to flourish, blossom, and bloom with full maturity. Cristina Toledo was a silvery and charismatic Agatha. Agatha, in stark comparison to Monica, who was sung by a lyric coloratura soprano, was given a more soubrette soprano voice in the form of Matilde Arbuffo, who mainly specialized in a lot of the soubrette soprano roles at the Teatro dell'Opera di Roma. And a good chunk of light lyric and lyric coloratura sopranos singing Agatha are also renowned for singing roles like Susanna from Nozze di Figaro, Terlina from Don Giovanni, Despina from Così fan tutte, Gilda from Rigoletto, Oscar from Un ballo in maschera, La voce dal cielo from Don Carlo, Nanetta from Falstaff, and even Suor Genoveffa from Suor Angelica, and Kate Pinkerton from Madama Butterfly. This role might be soubrettish in nature, but she also must possess a silvery tone to make her radiate with charisma, and Cristina Toledo did just that. There is a silvery sheen to her voice that I love, and even though it could use a lot more coordination, as in chest voice coordination, she still has that radiance that made her so addicting to listen to and totally enjoyable. There's even that girlish stage presence that she imbued Agatha with, and she did so with beauty, aplomb, and absolutely charming femininity. Karin van Ooyen was a plush and sufficiently chesty voiced Zoe, especially considering that she used her superb stage presence to make Zoe a sort of big sister overseer figure to the handmaidens, and she did so with nobility and great involvement. Karis Tucker was a creamy toned and gorgeously voiced Sabina, all thanks to that beautiful lyric mezzo voice that could blossom into full maturity and blossom into more leading lady roles. And Martina Baroni is a charmingly gorgeous Lucilla, all thanks to her lyric mezzo voice that manages to radiate and blossom. And I'm sure that it could also grow in sufficient chestiness, and there's also that pleasing quality that I have loved in Signora Baroni's voice. Manuel Fuentes was a handsome bishop, and this role calls for a basso cantante or a basso profondo, especially considering that he needs to imbue this character with nobility, strength, and paternal authority. In fact, a good chunk of interpreters who have sung the bishop include the likes of Nicola Zaccaria and Miguel Angel Zapater. A good chunk of basses who sang the role of the bishop would also go on to sing the likes of Sparafucile from Rigoletto, Hagen from Götterdämmerung, Gonemans from Parsifal, Filippo II from Don Carlo, Le Comte de Sombry from Les Huguenots, Ramfis from Aida, Pistola from Falstaff, and many other great roles for either a basso cantante or a basso profondo. And Manuel Fuentes' star was shining like the most beautiful of constellations that I've ever seen. And it's also thanks to his well-focused, rich, round, and sufficiently cavernous basso cantante voice that has the potential to grow. There was no throatiness. It was clear. It was listenable. It was pure. And there was no wobble, no signs of impurity, no signs of throatiness whatsoever, no signs of nasality. It is a sturdy, virile, basso cantante voice that just blossomed so beautifully. And I can see a fantastic future in Senor Fuentes in roles such as Don Giovanni, Mephistopheles, Filippo II, Massimiliano from I Masnadieri, Pagano from I Lombardi, and Silva from Hernani. The possibilities for this young basso cantante are absolutely endless, and he has the tall stage presence to prove it, as well as the clear, focused tone to make himself shine so beautifully. Patrick Getty used his tall and demanding stage presence to make The Exorcist come to life. And The Exorcist is a slightly rougher part than The Bishop because he also does need that basso cantante voice to make him come alive. And a great chunk of basso cantantes who sang The Exorcist would also sing Gurnemanz, Wotan, and many other great roles for a basso cantante, including the likes of Don Fernando from Fidelio, as well as the title role of Don Giovanni. And one of the most notable interpreters of The Exorcist was Ivan Sardi. And Patrick Getty might be one of my most favorite bassi cantanti, let alone bassi profondi, that I've ever heard. His tall and handsome stage presence that dominate everybody and made certain people feel like midgets just managed to make him absolutely addicting to listen to and watch. Sure, there is some throatiness found in his voice. Sure, there is a bit of a semblance of a voce ingolata. However, he still managed to use those dark, round, rich tones to make The Exorcist come to life and do so in the most amazing way possible. And I salute Patrick Getty for managing to do such a laudable job as a singing actor and using his stage presence to make the best out of The Exorcist. Ivan Inverardi was quite involving as Basilio. And of course, we dare not forget that the first Basilio was a baritone renowned for singing Verdi, Wagner, and Verismo, specifically Carlo Tagliabue. And a great chunk of Verdi baritones who sang Basilio were also renowned as Rigoletto, Giorgio Germont, Il Conte di Luna, Monforte, Don Carlo from Hernani, Don Carlo di Vargas from La Forza del Destino, Amonasro from Aida, Scarpia from Tosca, Marcello from La Bohème, Donner from Das Rheingold, Der Holländer from Der Fliegende Holländer, both Klingsor and Amfortas from Parsifal, and even Kurvenal from Tristan und Isolde. What's necessary about this particular role is the size of his voice. That needs to be beefy and also ensure that those open high notes are round and rich. But more than anything, the beefiness, the darkness, and the strength needed to sing Basilio must be intact. And even though Ivan Inverardi does have his moments of beefiness on some occasions, he had a bit of a problem with holding out against some really true and strong baritones like Gian Giacomo Guelfi and even Carlo Tagliabue himself, because there were times that he sounded quite wobbly, and there were times that he sounded a little bit all over the place. However, it's still a voice of size and strength, and he was still able to give the vocal goods to make Basilio come to life as a conflicted husband and someone who is about to be a victim of Silvana's spells. So he still did an amazing job in making Basilio come to life. And even though he did have some vocal inconsistencies, those can be forgiven because Signore Inverardi was still able to be sufficiently chesty in the lower parts of his voice and do so with aplomb and involvement. Georgi Vasiliev was a sufficiently dashing Donello, and with Donello, you do need someone who can be lyrical and dramatic at the same time. The very first Donello was Angelo Minghetti, who was also renowned for singing roles like Rodolfo from La Boheme and even more meatier roles aside from the lyric tenor roles that he was renowned in. And what you need in Donello is a spinto tenor, let alone a dramatic tenor, who can combine the incisive dramatic singing found in the young Siegfried from Wagner's Siegfried, Parsifal, and Arindal, as well as the vocal acting found in Loge from Das Rheingold, and the more impassioned singing found in Walter von Stolzing, Calaf, Turiddu, and Don Carlo from Verdi's Don Carlo. What you essentially need in any tenor singing Donello is a whole lot of incision, a whole lot of squillo, and someone who can combine spinto singing with slightly more dramatic singing and do so with an incisively present voice. Georgy Vasilyev is essentially a lyric tenor, and a fine lyric tenor at that, who still had good musicianship and a strong stage presence to make him absolutely involving as a singing actor. He was also sufficiently charismatic and charming as a singing actor, thus using his sturdy lyric tenor voice to make him present and established in this role. Sure, his voice was a tad bit small as Donello because there were times that he had to open his mouth really wide to sing those high notes, because there were also times that he also strained a bit, and because there were times that his voice kind of drowned out against the orchestra. Nevertheless, Georgy Vasilyev was vocally present, his stage presence was sufficiently strong, and he struck a striking impression on me as a singing actor. He may not have the extremely grand vocal goods found in the likes of Giacomo Lauri Volpi or Giacinto Prandelli or many of the other great Italian spinto tenors of the past. However, what Georgy Vasilyev had in store was a whole lot of charisma, a whole lot of virile charm, and a whole lot of beauty found in his natural lyric tenor voice. There was no wobble. There was no tremolo. There was no wear and tear. It was still as fresh as a daisy, and it was still as fine as ever, although I do recommend him to be a lot more conscientious about his choice of repertoire, because that is a naturally fine lyric tenor voice right there. I just don't want to see and hear it being so torn apart by taking on these heavier roles, regardless of whatever issue I had with Signore Vasilyev in terms of taking roles like this that are a tad bit too heavy on his voice, his natural lyric tenor voice. I still have to salute him for what he was able to accomplish as Donello, being so full of charm and so full of theatrical involvement, especially where the final moments were concerned, where I get to see him at his A game, and I get to see him just throw it all out and just make himself absolutely involved in the drama. So hats off to him for doing a job superbly done. Chance-Jonas O'Toole was effective as the young fanatic, and what you need in this role is a superb light lyric, let alone character tenor, to make this thankless role come to life. And a good chunk of light lyric tenors or character tenors singing this role would also sing the likes of Mime, as well as the Shepherd from the Ring Tetralogy and Tristan und Isolde respectively. And there have also been singers singing this particular role who would also do light lyric tenor roles or even character parts, and being successful in each and every one of them. And Chance-Jonas O'Toole was quite a fine young light lyric tenor who also has the potential to continue with character tenor parts. He does have a superb stage presence, and one that I totally salute him for, because he was able to be involved in the drama and involved in the music and do so in a way that made him stand out so well. I also have to give a lot of kudos to Silvia Paul as the old lady, as well as the vassals that consisted of Andrea Sparta, Nicolas Franciscus, and Corai Tuna, and Levi Nau's very stirring portrayal as Cesario di Gello, who you can't help but feel sad for, especially when he dies under Agnese's supposed spell. So overall, the singing was quite fascinating on all sides of the border. We had some really great singing found in Suajo, who was able to give such a strong and sturdy performance as Monica, as well as Olesya Golovneva singing up a storm as Silvana, although her naturally lyric temperament might seem a little bit too forced for this otherwise dramatic role. And of course, we even get someone like Martina Serafin, who was still able to give the goods theatrically as Eudosia, even though her vocal resources are kind of up and down. But Dore Soffel as Agnese di Cervia was absolutely beautiful and absolutely mighty. In fact, I would even say that Martina Serafin, Dore Soffel, and Olesya Golovneva managed to sing up a storm tonight as these three pivotal female roles. Among the men, Ivan Inferardi might have his vocal faults in terms of not being a sufficiently rich baritone voice, and yes, Georgi Vasilyev is a tad bit too lyrical for Donello, but both of them had strong vocal performances as well as theatrical performances that I could forgive whatever issue I had with them. And Caitlin Gaudimer, she managed to sing up a storm as the mother, all thanks to her borderline spinto soprano voice. And I dare not forget about the virility found in both Manuel Fuentes and Patrick Getty, respectively, as the bishop and the exorcist. And I also dare not forget about the equally stirring performances found in Cristina Toledo's sparkling Agata, Karin van Ooyen's plush Zoe, Karis Tucker's gorgeous Sabina, and Martina Baroni's equally gorgeous Lucilla. Each and every one of the singers contributed so handsomely to this production of Respighi's La Fiamma that I salute each and every one of them for what they were able to accomplish so well. The conducting done by Maestro Carlo Rizzi was nuanced and absolutely superb. There was not one false note that I heard. He was able to take advantage of those sweeping melodies, and even when it came to Donello's and Silvana's duet, that kind of reminded listeners of Tristan's and Isolde's love duet from, of course, Wagner's Tristan und Isolde. He took advantage of each and every one of those moments that I was able to listen throughout the entire evening. And of course, the chorus and the orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin were absolutely superb, being as formidable, mighty, and totally technically wonderful as they've always been. So with the last evening of this interesting opera making its mark on the Deutsche Oper Berlin in the form of Ottorino Respighi's La Fiamma, this was an opera I can easily recommend, especially to listen to if you are hankering for an opera that has a lot of thrills and a lot of passion and even a lot of horror elements. This is an opera for you if you are hankering for those magic elements, especially where witchcraft is involved. So this is something I can definitely recommend, but you might have to be choosy of which production you want to see. Stick to a more traditional production, or if you like, you can listen to the 1955 recording starring Mara Koleva, Giacinto Prandelli, Carlotta Reboué, Lucia Danielli, Maria Teresa Mandalari, and the very young Anna Moffo as Monica. As for how the singers fared, everybody did so handsomely, especially where Doris Zoffel and her veteran contributions as a superb mezzo-soprano managed to be in full evidence as Agnese di Cervia, and where Suajo managed to grow so beautifully as a lyric soprano with good coloratura technique as Monica. And I also dare not forget about not only Doris Sofel, who did superbly as Agnese, but also Martina Serafin, who, despite some vocal flaws of uncoordinated chest tones and certain parts of her voice that kind of strayed away from core, she was still able to do a fine job as Eudosia, and Olesa Golovneva doing a fine job as Silvana and giving everything she's got. Therefore, this was definitely a fine evening for horror opera, especially for Halloween month. And for those of you who caught Ottorino Respighi's La Fiamma at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you really love all the singers who were able to give it their all? Did you also find the production of Christof Loy interesting, or did you not like it at all? Was there a singer who stood out to you so much, whether it be Martina Serafin, Doris Sofel, Olesa Golovneva, even Ein Verardi, or Georgi Vasiliev, or even that of Suajo or Cristina Toledo, or many of the soloists that you love to listen to? Or did you feel like this opera, let alone everything about it, are not to your liking? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of Ottorino Respighi's La Fiamma at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte, starring Nina Soldovnikova as Pamina. So until then, good night everybody and happy Halloween month.